Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk about something that I don't hear a lot of influencers that deal with steroids online really talk about too much. I've heard people touch upon it, but I'll get right to it, which is how do you find the right ratios between different compounds, right? So test to whatever ratios. That's going to be the test is going to be the main one that you based all the rest of the ratios off. And this is going to be important to finding the right stack. And what's important is when you're finding the right stack, you want to obviously minimize the estrogen conversion. So that's going to be a major aspect about what ratios you do. But also the other thing is the synergistic effects that the different ratios will contribute to, and obviously that the synergistic effects is going to be based on your goals, what the goal is. So there's different goals are going to have different ratios, so I'm going to address that towards the end. But to get right to the point, finding the right ratio is something that a lot of guys, I think, who start taking steroids I see a lot of guys actually question this, like how much masteron should I take with testosterone, or etc., how much primobolan, etc. And it's understandable because when you're taking different compounds, you kind of want to have somebody who's done it before to tell you what the right guideline is. Okay, so first of all, very simply, very easy, I'm going to start with how much testosterone you should be taking, because all the rest of the ratios are going to be based off that measurement. So to find out how much testosterone you take, usually when you're starting taking steroids in general, I recommend 250, because you're going to be going into your goal is to actually be doing proper cycles, right? You're not just doing a TRT. So you start with 250 and then 2 weeks later, roughly, you can bump it up 50 to 100. 2 weeks after that, bump it up 50 to 100 milligrams per week, that is, until you start to run into the estrogenic side effects. The primary one you'll run into probably first is high blood pressure, and also it'll be due to the fact that your body's not used to the androgen load and injecting that much oil in you and things. That's why we titrate it every few weeks, because you're acclimatizing the body to taking steroids or taking the testosterone. But you're going to run eventually into a point where you'll start to feel either like shit, maybe a little bit out of breath, a little bit feeling like that. Monitor your heart rate. You'll see that your blood pressure might spike to something like 140, 150 over 90, etc. So at that point, you pull back a little bit on the testosterone, because now you found out what the upper limit is of what you should do. And I guarantee a lot of you it's going to be around the 400 range, like just above 400, where that's going to start happening. So you pull back like 50 to 100, and that's going to be the start of where your essential steroid dose without running into side effects. So you're maxing out, you're taking as much as you can without having the negative side effects. Okay, that's essentially what it is. And obviously we're not dealing with any type of aromasin or AI pills. The other thing, once you found that, I recommend personally, you're going to pick a secondary compound. The two secondary compounds I recommend are either going to be primobolan or masteron, and both of those I would recommend running at a 1-to-1 ratio for probably about 90%, 95% of the guys out there, what your goals are going to be. Okay? I guarantee most guys out there, their goals are going to be somewhat aesthetic based and somewhat obviously physique based. So what that's going to do, essentially at the 1-1 ratio, primobolan acts as an AI, so it's going to help control the estrogen a little bit, which is good. Even though we control the estrogen by not taking too much testosterone, it's going to just mitigate it a little bit more. And the masteron is going to essentially help at the receptor sites not have the estrogen conversion in places like your breast tissue. Now, what it also is going to do is have the right amount, so it's like you're taking a threshold amount where these secondary compounds are actually going to have that proper synergistic effect, proper effect on like what those compounds. You're letting those compounds shine essentially by taking a one ratio. If you were to take like a 2-to-1 ratio, that's 2 testosterone to 1 masteron, you're not really letting the masteron shine. So I wouldn't say it would be pointless, but it would be not ideal, sub-ideal. Now, why don't we take like a 1-to-2 ratio testosterone to masteron or something like that? Because then it almost becomes overkill, and in something like primobolan, it might actually crush the estrogen too much. Now, there's a bit of a sliding scale based on genetics. Some people might take primobolan and their estrogen totally crashes. Other people, it has no effect at all. But I think reasonably, for vast majority of people, a 1-to-1 ratio with test is going to work just fine. So, talked about primobolan and masteron. I recommend choosing one of the two. Some people do both, but your first cycle, just do one of the two, and maybe just leave it there, 1-to-1 ratio. Now, when you start adding other compounds, such as nandrolone, I really do not recommend doing a 1-to-1 ratio with test, because it's going to you're going to potentially run into some really negative sides, and so at the very most, do a 2-to-1 ratio test to nandrolone. At the very most, I'd recommend starting even lower than that. So this is the general guideline for guys out there who want to, we're running into HRT territory now. So we found the right amount of tests you're doing. You match that with either masteron or primobolan, then you can add a third compound like nandrolone is a good option. At very least, like just half the dosage of your doing of testosterone, and right there is, based on the ratios that we're doing and the volume of compounds we're doing, we're finding like a very balanced stack. So this is what it all comes down to, is like the whole moral of this story is you have a balanced stack that is synergistic, that is low on the negative side effect profile of things. You're taking like an effective dose, so it's going to be doing something, right? And based on that, you might tweak it a little bit, but really, I'm just providing a framework of what I found that works based on my own experience. And I know generally this is a lot of guys out there might have the same kind of consensus as me on this. But if you don't, if you have something else you want to add, please do leave in the comments. The other thing I should mention is that some compounds that do act as AIs are a bit more unpredictable. So when you're dealing with things like EQ, it's not going to be as much as a cut or dry answer as something like masteron. It's like you could run at a 1-1 ratio, but some guys it might totally crush your estrogen, because EQ is a bit stronger in that regard. There's a bit more genetic variance. So some compounds are going to be a bit like not as cut and dry, and even things like, okay, you're getting into something a little stronger compounds like trenbolone. I wouldn't really do as much of a ratio as much as just start at a very low dose and kind of work up from there. It'd be more of like a daily dose as opposed not in relation to what how much testosterone per se you're doing. So with trenbolone, I would recommend something like 50 to 70 milligrams a week, and then titrate a little bit up from there. But trenbolone, and even things like nandrolone and R19s in general, a little goes a long way. You really don't need that much on top of the testosterone stack and on top of the masteron and things for you to really fill out. Granted, you have your diet and you have your sleep, and you have your exercise all dialed. You really don't need that much. Sometimes less is more. Well, not doing too much is more. You find like what people call like a minimum effective dose. Well, I wouldn't call it minimum effective dose. I would just call it an effective dose, an effective balanced dose. You know what I mean? Not excessive, because once you start pushing things or you start doing too much, I think everybody has to experience it at some point in time if you're doing steroids. Just when you've done too much, what it feels like shit. It's going to affect your training. It's going to affect your mood. It's going to affect everything, right? And the longer you do it, the more you'll be able to tolerate maybe these compounds. So that's why I'm bringing the balanced dose for somebody who who is just starting their journey. So what are your thoughts about that? I know some of you guys are more experienced. What are your thoughts? Is what I'm saying make sense? Finding the right ratios between compounds based on how much testosterone you're doing. That's kind of like going to be the standard where everything else is based off. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Leave in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.